friends. So Jiang Yan only knew that Elliot Reed had a wife with no background who stayed at home all day taking care of housework, whose surname seemed to be Yun, and he had never met her. Therefore Jiang Yan would never associate Elliot Reed's wife with no background with Yun Qian. Isn't that Yun Qian the CEO of Xingye? What are you staring at her for? Jiang Yan asked curiously. You don't have a crush on her, do you? As Jiang Yan's voice faded, Yun Qian stood up and left the booth. Seeing this, Elliot Reed also got up and left, heading in Yun Qian's direction. Hey, what are you doing? Jiang Yan shouted at Elliot Reed's back, but the only response he received was silence. So Jiang Yan simply stopped shouting, letting him do as he pleased. He was heartbroken, so it was understandable that he was a little out of sorts. Yun Qian went to the restroom and then started retching by the sink. It's strange, she clearly has a good alcohol tolerance, so why does she feel a bit unwell today? Maybe she's been too tired lately, she needs to take some time to go to the hospital for a checkup. As soon as Yun Qian came out of the restroom, she saw Elliot Reed leaning against the door, seemingly waiting for her. Although the two are divorced, they now have an additional layer of partnership, so Yun Qian didn't ignore him. She walked up to Elliot Reed smiling. What a coincidence, so Lu, I didn't expect to meet you here. Meeting at the entrance of the women's restroom, what a coincidence indeed. Not a coincidence, I was waiting for you. Elliot Reed said in a deep voice. Whether Elliot Reed was truly stupid or pretending, she couldn't tell, but he actually answered her seriously. She was subtly mocking him, couldn't he tell? So annoying, but I have to keep smiling. Is there anything you need from me, Xiao Lu? I actually didn't know my wife, whom I'm with day and night, had such a good alcohol tolerance. Ex-wife. Yun Qian added, we're already divorced. Really? Elliot Reed smiled slightly, reaching up to tug at his tie. I remember we signed a divorce agreement before, but we haven't gone to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get a divorce certificate yet. Since returning to the Yun family, Yun Qian had been busy with company affairs and she had forgotten about this. Without going through the divorce procedures, you are not truly divorced. Then let's schedule a time to go through the formalities, Yun Qian said unhurriedly. Elliot Reed looked at Yun Qian's calm and composed appearance, and felt as if a large stone was pressing on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe. He walked towards Yun Qian step by step, until he had her cornered against the wall. Yun Qian instinctively shrank back, her eyes full of wariness as she looked at Elliot Reed. What do you want to do? Elliot Reed raised his hand and propped it against the wall, trapping Yun Qian in his arms. What do I want to do? I haven't even asked you why you lied to me. Elliot Reed's warm breath fell on Yun Qian's face, making her feel a little overwhelmed. Back then she fell in love with Elliot Reed at first sight during a banquet, so she had someone investigate his background. But at the time, Elliot Reed had a girlfriend who was Lillian. Of course, Yun Qian would never do anything to ruin someone else's relationship, so she kept her feelings for Elliot Reed hidden in her heart. It wasn't until later, when Lillian went abroad, that the little flame in Yun Qian's heart for Elliot Reed rekindled once again. But she learned that Elliot Reed wanted to find a wife without a background. So, despite her family's objections, she concealed her identity and married Elliot Reed. In fact, Yun Qian also knew that Elliot Reed was just doing this to spite Lillian. The reason for finding a woman without status or background was simply because she would be easy to control and could be easily dismissed with money when no longer needed. Yun Qianjin naively thought that as long as she stayed by Elliot Reed's side, one day she would move him and he would fall in love with her. In those 3 years she toiled like an ox and was utterly devoted, but Elliot Reed never gave her a second glance. She endured hardships she had never experienced before in her life. But in the end things didn't turn out as she had hoped. As soon as Lillian returned to China, Elliot Reed proposed a divorce. In these 3 years she couldn't even get close to the edge of Elliot Reed's heart, let alone enter it. The reason why Yun Qian didn't get her wish was because she neglected to love herself before loving others. For the sake of loving Elliot Reed, she lost herself. She had become someone she didn't even love, so how could Elliot Reed love her? Therefore she no longer wanted any emotional entanglement with Elliot Reed, and she had completely given up on him. In the future she just wanted to be herself and love herself well. She wanted to be with her family and friends and then manage the Xingyi group well. Faced with Elliot Reed's questioning, Yun Qian had nothing to explain. She concealed her identity only to marry Elliot Reed, and apart from that she was wholeheartedly devoted to him. But now it no longer mattered. Seeing that Yun Qian didn't answer, Elliot Reed continued to press her. Why aren't you talking? Yun Qian let out a cold laugh. President Liu, what's the point of saying all this now? You've never loved me and I don't love you anymore either. Let's hurry up and get the divorce done, it's the best for both of us, isn't it? The words, I don't love you anymore, left Elliot Reed momentarily stunned. Although she never had any feelings for Yun Qian, she could see that Yun Qian loved him. Even the servants at home felt that Yun Qian loved Elliot Reed miserably. Actually, before he married Yun Qian, he thought she was only after his money, but later he found out that wasn't the case. He seemed to really like him. However, it was impossible for him to like a woman with no family background, no connections and no knowledge. So he had always turned a blind eye to Yun Qian's love. In fact, he didn't know what Yun Qian's love for him was all about, because the two had only met once before they got married. She took the initiative to find him, saying that she met his marriage requirements and wanted to marry him. He thought she was pretty good-looking and had a gentle temperament, so he agreed. But how could her love come so inexplicably and leave so suddenly? Taking advantage of Elliot Reed's days, Yun Qian stomped hard on Elliot Reed's foot with the heel of her high heel, and then ran away quickly. After returning to the booth, she still felt a little uncomfortable, so she asked Noah to take her home. After returning home, Yun Qian drank a bowl of hangover soup made by the aunt, then took a shower and fell asleep. She didn't know why she had been feeling sleepy and had a poor appetite lately. Yun Qian couldn't figure out the reason, so she simply stopped thinking about it. Perhaps she was just tired. She fell asleep shortly after getting into bed. On the other hand, Elliot Reed didn't have such good sleep quality as her. He lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. Yun Qian's figure lingered in his mind, impossible to shake off. So he simply gave up on sleeping, got up and took another bottle of wine from the liquor cabinet, and sat by the window, slowly drinking. He looked up at the stars in the sky, wondering if Yun Qian was asleep now. In her sleep, Yun Qian turned over, as if sensing that someone was thinking of her. Elliot Reed didn't sleep all night. He went through the entire process from when he and Yun Qian first met to the present. He thought he shouldn't be able to remember it clearly. But everything between the two of them, every little detail, was playing in his mind like a movie. He remembered every single thing clearly. He had just brought Yun Qian back and it was their first time sharing a room. It was Yun Qian's first time tying a tie for him, her first time taking care of him when he was drunk, her first time cooking for him. So many things. He didn't know when it started, but Yun Qian had already integrated into every aspect of his life, walked into his heart, and even he himself hadn't realized it. He finally understands now why he felt so empty after Yun Qian left. It turns out that Yun Qian had entered his heart at some unknown time. Of course, he would feel empty and uncomfortable when something was suddenly missing from his heart. Therefore he cannot divorce Yun Qian, absolutely not. He began to rejoice that Yun Qian had left before they had time to complete the divorce procedures. This gave them both another chance. The next morning, Elliot Reed went to Yun Qian's office with great enthusiasm. He wanted to tell her that he had her in his heart and that he didn't want to divorce her. Walking out of the Xingye Group building, he wanted to call Yun Qian, but when he turned on his phone, he found that he didn't have Yun Qian's contact information. So he had to have someone call Yun Qian's secretary, instructing her to have Yun Qian call him when she was free, as he had something important to discuss with her. A private hospital in Rongqing. Yun Qian didn't go to work today and came for a checkup. She suspected that she might have been too busy recently and had irregular eating habits, which led to some nausea and vomiting. At this moment, Yun Qian was sitting across from the doctor with the examination report in her hand. When the doctor told her that she was not sick but pregnant, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. In the 3 years of her marriage to Elliot Reed, she had also fantasized about having a child that belonged to her and Elliot Reed. Her mother-in-law, Su Lan, often brought up the issue of not having children, constantly saying that she was from the countryside, and even secretly ma her as a hen that couldn't lay eggs. What Su Lan didn't know was that every time she and Elliot Reed were together, Elliot Reed would take precautions and ask her to take medicine afterward. With such double protection, how could she possibly get pregnant? She had also hinted to Elliot Reed that she wanted a child, but each time Elliot Reed coldly brushed it off, saying it wasn't the right time. Later, as time passed, she stopped mentioning it. But how could she be pregnant now? According to the doctor, she was already more than 3 months pregnant, but because she was thin and not showing much, it wasn't obvious on the surface. And she herself was rather careless and didn't have the habit of tracking her period, because her periods had always been irregular, so there was no need to keep track. Occasionally she would even miss 2 months. She didn't expect that she hadn't had her period because she was pregnant. Carefully recalling what had happened before, Yun Qian realized when she had gotten pregnant. Just 3 months ago, before she was divorced from Elliot Reed came home drunk from a social event, and the two of them had sex. It must have been that time that Elliot Reed didn't use protection. That morning, because her mother-in-law, Su Lan, wanted to drink chicken soup, she got up early and forgot to take her birth control pill. Just this one accident and there was a little life in her belly. It really makes you marvel at the magic and greatness of life. If it were before, she would definitely be happy about the arrival of this child, but now is not the right time for this child to come. On the way home, Yun Qian touched her flat lower abdomen, finding it hard to believe that there was actually a 3-month-old child inside. The doctor said the child is already over 3 months old, and abortion is not recommended unless absolutely necessary. Moreover, Yun Qian's physical condition is not very good. Because of taking birth control pills for many years, if she aborts this child, it will be difficult for her to conceive in the future. This makes Yun Qian very troubled and she doesn't know what to do. In fact, she really wants to be a mother, she dreams of it. But this child is her and Elliot Reed's child. Can a child grow up happily with parents who don't love each other? If she raises the child alone, will the child be happy without a father? Her childhood was spent without a father. Although her mother and grandfather doted on her, seeing other children with their fathers brought a kind of heartache that was hard to describe. Was she going to let her child repeat her mistakes? Yun Qian didn't return to the detached villa under her name, but instead went back to the Yun family home. Yun's mother could tell at a glance that Yun Qian was in a bad mood. She knew her daughter best. Whenever she sat there in a daze without saying a word, it meant she had encountered a very tricky problem. She personally made a glass of milk for Yun Qian, then holding the milk sat down next to Yun Qian. Xia, what happened? If there's anything you must tell Mom. Mom will help you figure it out. As she spoke, Yun Qian's mother handed the milk to Yun Qian. Back then, Yun Qian left home against her mother's wishes, hid her identity and married Elliot Reed. Now she's home, but she's pregnant with Elliot Reed's child, and she really doesn't know how to bring it up. Mom, I'm fine, just a little tired from being too busy lately. Hearing Yun Qian say this, Mother Yun finally felt relieved. It's good that you're okay. You should delegate company matters to others when you can. Don't do everything yourself and make sure to rest. Yun Qian smiled gently. I know, Mom, don't worry. Yun Mu placed her hand on Yun Qian's hand, then revealed a loving smile. Yun Qian looked at Yun Mu, noticing a few strands of white hair at her temples. After Yun father passed away, Yun Mu stayed and raised Yun Qian. Some people advised her to remarry, but she refused them all. She worried that her daughter would feel wronged if she remarried. She didn't want her to lose her mother after losing her father. So she would spend the rest of her life alone, just to protect her beloved daughter. Thinking of this, Yun Qian felt extremely guilty. Her mother had sacrificed so much for her, yet she was not an obedient daughter. In the past few days, Yun Qian had been absent-minded due to the child's matter. Even when I'm at work, I often find myself spacing out. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking at the door had been going on for quite a while, but Yun Qian in the office still hadn't reacted. Finally, Secretary In, worried that something might have happened to Yun Qian, simply pushed the door open and went inside. At this moment, Yun Qian was staring out the window in a daze. President Yun, Secretary In called out softly to Yun Qian. Only then did Yun Qian react, immediately composing himself and returning to his normal state. Is there something you need? President Liu from Yunza is here. Elliot Reed? What's he here for? Because the two companies are now in a cooperative relationship, she couldn't very well turn Elliot Reed away. After Elliot Reed waited in the reception room for a while, Yun Qian slowly pushed the door open and entered. President Liu, I apologize for being late due to business matters. Yun Qian did it on purpose just to snub him, meaning to tell him that the president of Xingye is not someone he can meet whenever he wants, he needs to make an appointment. Having been in the business world for so many years, Elliot Reed of course understood Yun Qian's meaning. The Yunza Group was founded by Elliot Reed's grandfather, but his father was not cut out for business. He was almost kicked out of the Yunza board of directors, and only managed to keep his position thanks to Elliot Reed, who returned from studying abroad, turning the tide. Later, in just a few years, he completely took control of Yunza and had 100% decision-making power. Simply because he had extraordinary abilities, and in the few years he took over Yunza, he multiplied Yunza's market value several times over. In Rongqing, no one dared to make him wait like Yun Qian did. The Yun family is the richest in Rongqing and they have been businessmen for generations. Later, Master Yun founded Xingye, which brought the Yun family's strength and wealth to a new level. However, in recent years, because Yun Qian was not around, Xingye declined slightly under Yun Yingjie's management. But the Yun family has a long history and is still the richest in Rongqing. Xingye is no worse than Yunze. So Yun Qian dared to leave Elliot Reed out in the cold, naturally having her reasons. Mr. Liu, is there anything you need today? Yun Qian didn't want to waste words with Elliot Reed and went straight to the point. Elliot Reed took out a document and showed it to Yun Qian, then tore it to pieces in front of her. Yun Qian looked at him in shock, momentarily speechless. The document he tore up was precisely their divorce agreement. Yun Qian had intended to wait until her mood had calmed down before discussing the divorce with Elliot Reed, but Elliot Reed's current actions made her unable to understand him. He was the one who initially proposed the divorce, so what did he mean by doing this now? A smile appeared on Elliot Reed's face as he saw Yun Qian's shocked expression. I don't want a divorce, I like you, Qian Xiao. Faced with this sudden confession, Yun Qian was filled with question marks. She wondered if Elliot Reed had a fever and it had damaged his brain. She not only thought so but also personally verified it. Yun Qian stepped forward and placed her hand on Elliot Reed's forehead. The temperature was normal, so why was he talking nonsense? Just as Yun Qian was about to retract her hand, Elliot Reed wrapped his arms around her slender waist. What are you doing? Yun Qian had become more sensitive after learning she was pregnant, and she felt repelled by Elliot Reed being so close to her now. If Elliot Reed were to find out she was pregnant, given his personality, he definitely wouldn't let her off easily. It wasn't that she was afraid of Elliot Reed, she just didn't want to get too entangled with him. She propped her hand against Elliot Reed's chest, preventing him from getting any closer. Elliot Reed carefully examined Yun Qian's face, feeling his heart pounding. This was a feeling he had never experienced before. The woman in front of him seemed to be able to make his heart race with ease. Looking at Elliot Reed's burning gaze, Yun Qian pushed him away. I just wanted to see if you had a fever, talking such nonsense here. Elliot Reed had anticipated that Yun Qian wouldn't believe his confession. But he still had to say it, and later he would use practical actions to show Yun Qian that every word he said came from the bottom of his heart. Qian Xiao, I know this might be a bit sudden, but please give me a chance. I will prove to you that everything I said is true. Yun Qian's eyes scanned Elliot Reed from top to bottom. He looked sincere enough, and his eyes were deep with affection. But that didn't impress Qian Yun. Before she signed the divorce agreement, Elliot Reed would beckon and she would eagerly greet him. But no matter how deeply in love Elliot Reed acts now, she has no interest. To say that Elliot Reed likes her, she finds it laughable. Because it felt like a mockery of her past 3 years of toiling away without earning even a sliver of his favor. And now that she's let go, she's received Elliot Reed's affection. She thinks Elliot Reed is sick in the head. Yun Qian's smile didn't reach her eyes as she said, President Liu, if you're sick, you should get treatment. After saying that, she turned and left, then said in a loud voice to Secretary An at the door, Shaoan, see him out. Then Secretary An went in and gestured for Elliot Reed to come in. Elliot Reed's face immediately darkened, not because Yun Qian dared to ask him to leave, but because Yun Qian actually thought he was sick for saying he liked him. After seeing off the dark-faced Elliot Reed, Secretary An couldn't help but shiver. Who wouldn't be intimidated by Elliot Reed, especially Elliot Reed with a dark face? It's too scary. From that day on, Elliot Reed began to pursue Yun Qian. Every day, Yun Qian was greeted with a bouquet of roses when she arrived at work. After work, Elliot Reed would always wait for her downstairs at Xingye Group. No one knew where Elliot Reed got her phone number, but he would send her messages of concern every day. She blocked a number and he would switch to a new one. Later, Yun Qian became too lazy to block them, simply pretending not to see them. She also avoided Elliot Reed after work. When Elliot Reed tried to find her under the guise of business, she pushed it off to her subordinates. During this time, Yun Qian has been busy with the company handover. She hired a professional manager, intending to temporarily entrust the company to them. After so much deliberation, Yun Qian decided to keep the baby. Because if she terminated the pregnancy this time, she might never be able to be a mother again. But all she wanted was the child, not Elliot Reed, the child's father, so she didn't plan to tell Elliot Reed about the child. She wanted to divorce Elliot Reed as soon as possible, then go abroad alone to give birth to the child and then quietly come back. Now that the child in her belly was growing day by day, She couldn't delay any longer and had to divorce Elliot Reed as soon as possible. But looking at Elliot Reed's current appearance, he probably wouldn't agree to a divorce, so Yun Qian came up with a plan. Noah was surprised that Yun Qian would ask him out today. This young lady had been extremely busy lately, and he had asked her out several times without success. The two chose to meet at a coffee shop downstairs from Xingye Group. When Noah arrived, Yun Qian was already waiting for him. He looked at the juice in front of Yun Qian, feeling a little puzzled. "Don't you usually just drink Americanos? Why the change of taste?" "I'm pregnant." Noah's jaw literally dropped in shock. In contrast, Yun Qian was calm and collected, as if she were talking about something as trivial as not wanting rice and preferring noodles for dinner. "Pregnant?" Noah's exclamation drew the attention of those nearby. Yun Qian gave him a disgusted glance. "Don't make such a fuss here." Noah frowned slightly. Was he making a fuss? It was clearly Yun Qian who was too calm. Later, Yun Qian directly proposed that Noah act in a play with him, the two pretending to be a couple to trick Elliot Reed into getting a divorce. "You want to raise the child alone?" Noah asked. Yun Qian nodded, yes. As Noah, who grew up with Yun Qian, was naturally willing to help her with this favor. He didn't say anything like it's not easy for a woman to raise a child. He knew that Yun Qian's decision must have been carefully considered. Besides, Yun Qian is not alone, she still has him. He will love Yun Qian's child as his own. In fact, Noah has always liked Yun Qian in his heart, but he didn't say it. He knew that Yun Qian simply regarded him as a good friend. If this window is broken, I'm afraid the two won't even be able to be friends. That wasn't the ending Noah wanted, so he chose to remain silent. Yun Qian held the juice in one hand and touched her belly, which was not yet showing, with the other, her eyes full of determination. "Baby, I will definitely give you a happy life and let you grow up healthy and happy." A strange emotion flashed through her heart, one that even she herself couldn't quite grasp. That day after work, Yun Qian didn't avoid Elliot Reed. Instead, she calmly walked out of the Xingye Group's gates, arm in arm with Noah. Seeing this, Elliot Reed immediately rushed forward and separated the two. "Yun Qian, what are you doing?" Elliot Reed asked angrily. Compared to Elliot Reed's anger, Yun Qian was particularly calm. "I'm holding my boyfriend. Is there a problem?" The woman's cold and distant voice pierced Elliot Reed's chest like a knife. "Boyfriend?" Elliot Reed's eyes swept fiercely towards Noah, who met his gaze without backing down. Looking at Elliot Reed's persistent and obsessive eyes, Noah felt that it probably wouldn't be so easy for Yun Qian to shake him off. Yun Qian grabbed Noah's hand again. She glanced at Elliot Reed indifferently, her eyes very cold. "Yes, boyfriend." Then she added, "I will have my lawyer give you the divorce agreement. I don't want anything. Please sign it as soon as possible and then we can go through the divorce procedures. If you don't agree, I will file a divorce application with the court, and then we will go through legal procedures." Yun Qian didn't want to go through legal procedures because it would take a long time. She was about to show, and she didn't have the time to continue dragging things out with Elliot Reed. If Elliot Reed knew she was pregnant, she would have even more trouble getting a divorce. The reason she said that was to deliberately provoke Elliot Reed. Someone as proud as Elliot Reed, how could he allow someone to challenge him like that? Clearly Yun Qian's goal was achieved. The words "angry" were written all over Elliot Reed's face. "Yun Qian, I'll just ask you one question. Are you determined to divorce me?" "Yes, I don't love you anymore. The person I love now is Noah." Hearing this, his expression changed abruptly, as if shrouded in a layer of cold frost, his brows furrowed tightly together, appearing solemn and conveying an awe-inspiring severity. "Fine, I'll grant you your wish. See you at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau at 2 p.m. tomorrow." With that, Elliot Reed drove off in his car. Yun Qian finally felt a weight lifted from her chest. She had stayed by Elliot Reed's side, taking care of him meticulously for 3 years, and understood his temperament thoroughly. He knew everything about him except for his feelings. Naturally, he knew how to ignite the fire of anger in Elliot Reed's heart. Elliot Reed was domineering, powerful, and had been sought after since childhood, with a strong possessive desire. His things had to be completely and utterly his, and he would discard them once they were tainted with any blemish. Women are the same. Elliot Reed would never allow another man to be in his woman's heart, nor would he ever think of snatching that woman away. It's not that he's worried about failing to snatch her, but because he feels that the woman is no longer pure and not worthy of him. The next day, Noah thought about going with Yun Qian, but Yun Qian refused. She just wanted to resolve the divorce with Elliot Reed as quickly as possible, and yesterday's provocation was almost enough. If she brings Noah to the divorce today, Elliot Reed might think she's eager to be with another man, and then deliberately delay the process. That wasn't the ending she wanted, so she chose to go alone. Today Yunqian wore exquisite makeup and a black suit dress. The skirt is A-line, which can nicely conceal her slightly protruding belly. Yunqian arrived at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau early. It was almost the time they had agreed upon, but Elliot Reed still hadn't arrived. Elliot Reed was in the habit of arriving 10 minutes early for everything, and the fact that he was so late now made Yunqian wonder if he had changed his mind. But Yunqian didn't dare to call and urge him, for fear that his young master temper would flare up and she wouldn't know what to do if he refused to marry her. She just kept waiting and waiting until 3 o'clock when Elliot Reed finally arrived late. Elliot Reed was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. His hair was carefully styled, but there was a faint blue tinge under his eyes that was hard to hide. Yunqian just glanced at him briefly and said nothing. She didn't want to know or care about Elliot Reed's affairs. She just wanted to get the divorce over with as soon as possible. The two of them didn't speak to each other as they walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau to complete the divorce procedures. There weren't many people getting certificates today, so they finished quickly, which surprised Yunqian a little. She didn't expect it to go so smoothly. The moment she received the divorce certificate, a smile appeared in Yunqian's eyes. Baby mommy did it. So happy. A low and magnetic voice beside her pulled Yunqian back from her happy mood. Of course I'm happy. Yunqian glared at Elliot Reed, then quickly walked towards the car. Watching Yunqian's quickly departing figure, a pang of bitterness welled up in Elliot Reed's heart. Yesterday, after leaving the entrance of the Xingyi group, Elliot Reed went to find someone to drink with. Elliot Reed, who usually had a great alcohol tolerance, surprisingly got drunk yesterday. He didn't wake up until noon today. Only then did he remember that he had an appointment with Yunqian to get a divorce today, so he slowly tidied himself up. He thought that since he was over an hour late, Yunqian should have left in anger long ago. Unexpectedly, Yunqian was still sitting there obediently waiting for him without a single complaint. Does she want to divorce him that badly? So be it. Elliot Reed sat in the car but didn't start it for a long time. He glanced at the divorce certificate he had casually thrown on the passenger seat, then slammed his hand heavily on the steering wheel. At this moment a couple walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The woman held the marriage certificate with a smile on her face, while the man looked calm. This scene was all too familiar to Elliot Reed. Back then he and Yunqian were just like this. The woman carefully unfolded the marriage certificate in front of the man, but he didn't even glance at it before quickly leaving. Leaving the woman standing blankly at the door alone, clearly hurt by the man's indifference. But the sadness only lingered on the woman's face for a moment, and she immediately squeezed out a smile and followed the man's footsteps. Seeing this, Elliot Reed immediately took out his phone and made a call to Secretary Liu. Check where Yunqian is right now for me. Secretary Liu was very efficient, and soon sent the current address of Yunqian to Elliot Reed. It's a hospital. What is she doing at the hospital? At this moment an 8 o'clock soap opera was playing out in Elliot Reed's mind. Could it be that Yunqian has some terminal illness, which is why she insists on divorcing him? Meanwhile Yunqian, who was having a prenatal checkup, sneezed several times in a row. Are you okay? Noah asked with concern. Yunqian shook her head. I'm fine, it's probably just a bit of a cold from the weather turning cold. Elliot Reed drove at breakneck speed and soon arrived at the hospital entrance. He ran up and down searching for Yunqian's figure, and finally saw Yunqian and Noah's figures at the entrance of the obstetrics and gynecology department. The doctor handed the pregnancy test report to Yunqian. The baby is very healthy, remember to come for checkups on time in the future. Noah took the report from Yunqian. Thank you, doctor. The father is very handsome and the mother is also very beautiful. It must be a beautiful baby. The doctor joked with a smile. Elliot Reed's face appeared in Yunqian's mind. Such a good-looking face's genes certainly wouldn't be bad. However, she still hoped that the baby would look more like her. The doctor mistook Noah for the child's father and neither of them refuted, simply smiling and saying, "Thank you, doctor." Noah didn't refute because he quite enjoyed being mistaken like that. Yunqian didn't refute because she felt it wasn't necessary as she was flying to France next week. On the other side of the corridor, Elliot Reed stood frozen, his back pressed tightly against the wall. It felt as if a million ants were crawling through his heart, tearing at it. He didn't know how to describe the feeling of heartache. So she was in such a hurry to divorce him because Yunqian was pregnant. Elliot Reed didn't even know how he left the hospital. He only felt that every step he took was extremely difficult, as if a massive weight was pressing down on his body. When Jiang Yan arrived at the bar, Elliot Reed had already drunk a table full of alcohol. This bar is Jiang Yan's private property, and Elliot Reed is also a regular here, so the bartender recognizes him. Seeing that Elliot Reed had drunk so much and worried that something might happen, the bartender called Jiang Yan. After Jiang Yan entered the private room, Elliot Reed only glanced at him faintly and then continued drinking. How strange, why can't I get drunk no matter how much I drink today? The scene at the hospital kept replaying in Elliot Reed's mind. He forced himself to forget it, to not think about it, but his brain was no longer listening to him. The more he tried not to think about it, the clearer the image became. Seeing his good brother so troubled by love, Jiang Yan was also very distressed. He also only found out yesterday that the eldest daughter of Xingye Group was actually the countrywoman who had been married to Elliot Reed for 3 years. Moreover, she was the one who insisted on divorcing Elliot Reed, but Elliot Reed was unwilling. Before, when Elliot Reed dragged him out for drinks to relieve his sorrow, he thought it was because of Lillian, but he didn't expect it was because of Yun Qian. He had never seen Elliot Reed like this before, repeatedly seeking solace for a woman. But drowning sorrows in alcohol only makes them worse. Alcohol clearly doesn't have the ability to dispel sorrow. He patted Elliot Reed on the shoulder, his voice heavy. Divorced? Elliot Reed didn't speak, only nodded slightly. Jiang Yan took a glass for himself and then sat down next to Elliot Reed. He picked up the wine on the table and poured himself a glass. Come on, brother, let me have a drink with you. Elliot Reed ignored his toast and continued to drink his own. Elliot, are you serious? It's just a woman, isn't it? As long as you want, there are plenty of women who will flock to your side, Jiang Yan said. Elliot was silent for a moment, then drained the wine in his glass. She's pregnant. Elliot's words left Jiang Yan a little confused. What terrible things have you done to make Yun Qian pregnant and still want to divorce you? After saying that, Jiang Yan realized he had said the wrong thing and hurriedly covered his mouth with his hand. Elliot Reed's slightly pursed thin lips revealed a cold aura. His expression was calm and he couldn't see his emotions. The child is not mine. Every time he was with Yun Qian he would take double protective measures, and it was impossible for Yun Qian to get pregnant. Damn it! Jiang Yan exclaimed. This heiress of Xingye Group is indeed different. She actually dared to cuckold Elliot Reed. Don't be too sad. Men. Life. Sometimes it's just like this. Jiang Yan really didn't know how to comfort Elliot Reed. He picked up his glass and clinked it forcefully against Elliot Reed's. Today I'll risk my life to keep you company, bottoms up. Before long, Jiang Yan began to lose consciousness. Looking at Jiang Yan slumped on the table, Elliot Reed shook his head, revealing a hint of helplessness. Jiang Yan, who had been dozing on the table for a while, suddenly raised his head. His eyes were fixed on Elliot Reed as he asked the question he had wanted to ask when he first woke up but hadn't. How do you know the child isn't yours? Jiang Yan found it hard to imagine that Yun Qian would still be interested in other men when she had a husband like Elliot Reed. Although I don't really want to admit it, Jiang Yan has to admit that Elliot Reed's appearance is indeed top-notch among men. I took very comprehensive measures. She won't get pregnant. At that time, Elliot Reed never thought about having a child of his own with Yun Qian. But now he's wondering if the ending would be different if they had a child together. Even with good precautions, pregnancy isn't impossible. There's always a chance of an accident. I think it's better for you to figure things out. Although Jiang Yan was drunk, what he said was more insightful than when he was sober. His words suddenly enlightened Elliot Reed. Elliot Reed suddenly stood up and patted Jiang Yan on the shoulder. Thanks, bro. After saying that, Elliot Reed left without even bothering to grab his coat, not looking back. Jiang Yan looked at the quickly departing Elliot Reed, then at the coat he had abandoned lying forlornly on the sofa, and then continued to lie down. Elliot Reed went straight to the hospital where Yun Qian was having her prenatal checkup. He hadn't expected that it would really be as Jiang Yan said, that Yun Qian's child was his. He found out that Yun Qian was more than 3 months pregnant, and Yun Qian hadn't left 3 months ago. Elliot Reed couldn't guarantee what Yun Qian did after she left, but before that he was sure that Yun Qian wouldn't do anything out of line. After learning about this, the gloominess Elliot Reed felt before disappeared, replaced by endless joy. He had just thought about having a child of his own with Yun Qian, and now his dream had come true. But in the blink of an eye he began to worry again. Yun Qian is pregnant and still insists on divorcing him. She must be determined. Could it be that Yun Qian despises him so much in her heart? So much so that she didn't even want to tell him she was pregnant with his child, but instead wanted to secretly give birth to it alone. Then he thought of Noah again, and he couldn't imagine his child calling another man dad in the future. He would never allow such a thing to happen. The next day, just as Yun Qian was about to leave for the company, she saw Elliot Reed's car parked in front of her house. Elliot Reed was leaning against the car with a few scattered cigarette butts on the ground. "What are you doing here?" Hearing Yun Qian's voice, Elliot Reed slowly raised his head to look at her. Elliot Reed arrived here in the middle of the night yesterday. He originally wanted to knock on the door to have a good discussion with Yun Qian, but then he thought that Yun Qian should be asleep. He didn't want to disturb her rest, so he waited here all night. Looking at the exhaustion on Elliot Reed's once handsome face, and the hint of stubble on his sharply defined jawline, Yun Qian could tell that he had been waiting for her here all night without sleep. What did he want? He wouldn't have regretted it after getting the divorce certificate, would he? But now that they were divorced, it was no use even if he regretted it. "Qianxia, let's talk." Yun Qian and Elliot Reed went to a dim sum restaurant nearby together. Yesterday, Elliot Reed stood in front of Yun Qian's house all night without sleep, thinking about many things. At first he couldn't understand why Yun Qian was so determined to divorce him, and didn't even tell him, the father, about the child. Later he put himself in Yun Qian's perspective and understood immediately. After learning Yun Qian's true identity, he had people investigate her. Yun Qian hid her identity to marry him back then. During the 3 years of their marriage, Yun Qian could be said to have worked like an ox, enduring hardship without complaint. But all she got in return was a divorce agreement from him after Lillian returned. Elliot Reed didn't know when Yun Qian fell in love with him, to the point where she was willing to give up herself for him. But Elliot Reed knew that if he were in Yun Qian's shoes, he definitely couldn't do what Yun Qian did. He would never lower himself to accommodate someone he liked who had someone else in their heart. But if that person was Yun Qian, he would be willing to try. He loved her and he owed her. "Qianxia, do we really not have a chance to start over?" Elliot Reed said with a pleading tone. Yun Qian shook her head firmly. "No." Hearing this, Elliot Reed lowered his head, his hands supporting his forehead. Looking at Elliot Reed like this, Yun Qian was a little confused and she had a bad feeling in her heart. What happened to Elliot Reed all of a sudden? He was clearly full of anger when they divorced yesterday, so why does he suddenly seem so regretful now? That's right, it's regret. Could it be that he found out something? When Elliot Reed looked up again, his eyes were already red. He gazed deeply into Yun Qian's eyes, which seemed to hold the stars and the sea, watery and bright. "Qianxia, I've thought a lot during this time. It was me who screwed up. I'm sorry for you. I've done a lot of things that hurt you. I know that maybe nothing I do can make up for the mistakes I've made, but I still want to sincerely say to you I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I beg you to give me a chance to make it up to you. I no longer expect to be with you again, I just hope to be by your side and see you often. Don't go to France, okay? Don't deprive me of my rights as a father. Give me a chance to take care of you. I will do my best to be a good dad. Nothing can compensate for a child's longing for a father's love. In fact, Elliot Reed, like Yun Qian, is a child who lacks a father's love. Elliot Reed's father was a good-for-nothing playboy who, even after getting married, still liked to mess around outside. Later he eloped with a woman, went abroad and never came back. From childhood to adulthood he has always forced himself to be the best among his peers. He just wants his father to take another look at him. Later, as he slowly grew up, he understood that no matter how outstanding he became, his father would never spare him another glance. But he still wanted to become the most outstanding person. Only by standing at the summit could he make others look up to him. And he would no longer seek anyone's attention. This also led to Elliot Reed being unable to see the good others did for him, which is why he overlooked Yun Qian and his own love for her. Actually, the reason Elliot Reed liked Lillian was also related to his father. In his high school years, his father eloped with someone else, and Lillian was the one who found him squatting in a corner, secretly wiping away tears. From then on, Lillian had a place in his heart. Therefore he had a blind trust in Lillian, which prevented him from seeing her true character. Elliot Reed's words touched Yun Qian. He spoke to the concerns she had always had in her heart. That is, Was she going to let her child be without a father like she was? No, deep down she didn't want to. She knew that for a child, a father's love was irreplaceable. But she couldn't help it, she couldn't give her child a complete family. Actually, a large part of the reason why Yun Qian fell in love with Elliot Reed at first sight was because Elliot Reed looked somewhat like her father. Was she going to let her child follow in her footsteps? Seeing a change in Yun Qian's face, Elliot Reed's eyes seemed to see the warm sun in winter, full of hope. Qian Xia, I ask for nothing else, I just want to be by your side and our child's side, just want to watch our child grow up. Please don't reject me, okay? Yun Qian pondered for a long time and finally made a difficult decision. She decided not to go abroad and to stay in Rome City. Children need their mother and they also need their father. Moreover, her mother is still in Rome City and she doesn't want to leave her again. Elliot Reed, I'm not leaving. Hearing Yun Qian's words, a bright smile appeared on Elliot Reed's face. Before he could be happy for long, Yun Qian's words poured a bucket of cold water on him. Although I've decided not to leave, it doesn't mean there will be anything between us. I won't deprive you of your right to be a father, but our relationship will only be that of co-parents. After the child is born, I will have custody. You can come to see him anytime and I won't stop you, but all matters concerning the child must be decided by me. If you agree to the above condition, then agree. If you cannot agree, then I will not let you see the child, nor will I see you again. The reason Yun Qian can say such a thing is that she has no fear of Elliot Reed whatsoever. Because she and Elliot Reed are already divorced, the child in her womb is naturally her decision to make. Even if the child is born, Elliot Reed would have no chance in a custody battle with her. Because the child is so young, the judge will definitely award custody to the mother. Moreover, her financial strength is no less than Elliot Reed's, so she can provide the child with everything Elliot Reed can. She will give the child the best living conditions and the highest quality educational resources. She will respect the child's ideas and allow him to grow up healthy and happy. This is Yun Qian's confidence. What makes Elliot Reed sad is not that he can't make decisions about the child, but that Yun Qian has drawn the line between them too clearly. But standing like this is already good enough, at least Yun Qian won't leave. Noah couldn't say whether he was happy or not after learning that Yun Qian had decided to stay in Rongqing. In short, he respected Yun Qian's decision, and as long as she was happy he would fully support her. After deciding to stay in Rongqing, Yun Qian told her mother that she was pregnant. Yun's mother did not blame Yun Qian, but instead asked her if she had thought about what she would have to endure as a single mother. Yun Qian smiled and told her that he had already made up his mind and would firmly move towards where she wanted him to go. Since that was the case, Yun Mu didn't say anything more. In fact, she was also very much looking forward to the arrival of this little grandson. Once people get old, they like things to be lively and want to enjoy the family happiness of being surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Elliot Reed did not tell Su Lan about Yun Qian's pregnancy. Elliot Reed knew that Su Lan and Yun Qian were not on good terms. Or rather, it should be said that Su Lan was unilaterally making things difficult for Yun Qian. Elliot Reed was worried that Su Lan would cause trouble for Yun Qian after learning about her pregnancy. He also didn't want Su Lan to bother him about the child. At that time she will definitely force him to fight with Yun Qian for custody of the child. What he wanted was not the child but the adult. Yun Qian still went to work at Xingye Group as usual, and she didn't have the severe morning sickness that some pregnant women have. The baby in her belly seemed to know that her mother was working hard, so it was always very well behaved. After getting pregnant, her sleep actually got better and better, and her skin became more and more tender. Elliot Reed also had a reason to hang around Yun Qian. Yun Qian left work a little early today because it was old Master Pei's birthday banquet, and she had to go change into a formal dress. Noah arrived early and waited for Yun Qian downstairs at Xingye Group. Grandpa Pei had always treated Yun Qian like his own granddaughter, so she would attend his birthday banquet no matter what. Elliot Reed also came to Xingye Group today to pick up Yun Qian, but unfortunately he missed her. The two met again at Grandpa Pei's birthday banquet. Yun Qian was wearing a low-key luxurious champagne-colored long dress, with a white shawl draped over her shoulders. Her beautiful long hair was simply styled up, making her look aloof and elegant, not ostentatiously flamboyant, but with a stunning and luxurious charm. As she entered the venue arm in arm with Noah, she immediately attracted everyone's attention. Not to mention that the two were a perfect match in terms of talent and appearance, like a match made in heaven. Just the fact that it was the eldest daughter of Xing Yi Group and the young master of the Pei family standing together was enough to make them the focus of the crowd. Standing on the other side, engaged in socializing with others, Elliot Reed couldn't help but grip his glass tighter. Yun Qian and Noah went to the inner hall together to visit Grandpa Pei. Looking at his grandson standing with Yun Qian, Grandpa Pei had a bright smile on his face. He had watched these two children grow up since they were little. He knew his grandson well, but he didn't know what Yun Qian was thinking. If the two children could get together, then Xingye and the Pei family would be a powerful combination. Most importantly, the two families knew each other well and there would be no concerns about their marriage. Qianxiao is here, come over and let Grandpa take a look. Old Master Pei smiled and waved at Yun Qian. Yun Qian walked over and sat next to Old Master Pei, then took out the carefully prepared gift. Grandpa, knowing you like to drink tea, this is a small token of my appreciation. Happy birthday. Old Master Pei smiled and accepted Yun Qian's gift. Qianxia is so thoughtful, unlike my boy who only knows how to make me angry. Grandpa, if you want to praise Qianxia, just praise Qianxia. Why bring me into it? Noah interjected, slightly unconvinced. The old Mr. Pei frowned and glanced at him, saying, if you were more promising and brought a girlfriend home, I wouldn't bother to talk about you. Then the old Mr. Pei shifted his gaze to Yun Qian, his face also turning into a smile. Does Qianxia have a boyfriend? Yun Qian immediately understood what Grandpa Pei meant and she smiled awkwardly. Noah didn't say a word either. Seeing that the two of them were silent, Grandpa Pei continued, when looking for a boyfriend, you must find someone you know well and who is good to you so that the two of you can live together for a long time. Okay, Grandpa, please don't say any more, Noah interrupted. Any more and he might as well just announce his ID number. He knew his grandfather wanted to match him up with Yun Qian, but their relationship could only ever be limited to friendship. After chatting with Grandpa Pei for a while, Yun Qian prepared to go back. She needed to rest more given her current condition. So she wasn't in the mood to socialize with those people outside. Noah wanted to take her home but she refused. After all, it was old Mr. Pei's birthday banquet, and it wouldn't be good for him as his grandson to be absent. Yun Qian walked out of the Pei family's villa. The driver was on his way to pick her up and she came out early to catch the evening breeze. She had only been walking for a short while when a car followed her, but she thought it was a departing guest and didn't pay attention. But after a while she noticed that this car was slowly driving behind her. She turned her head to look and saw a familiar black Maybach. Seeing her turn around, the car behind also came up and drove alongside her. The car window slowly lowered, revealing that handsome face. Get in, I'll take you back. No need, I want to walk. Hearing this, Elliot Reed also got out of the car and walked to Yun Qian's side. The driver was still in the back, driving slowly and leisurely behind them. Yun Qian is not as resistant to Elliot Reed as she used to be, because he has assured her that he will not fight her for the child, nor will he force her to do anything she doesn't want to do. So now, in her eyes, Elliot Reed is the child's father, a partner. Why do you suddenly want to walk? Are you in a bad mood? Elliot Reed asked. Just wanted to catch the evening breeze so I can sleep better tonight. Recently, Elliot Reed specifically looked up precautions for pregnant women. He knew that pregnancy could potentially lead to poor sleep. But he couldn't be by Yun Qian's side at all times. Even if he wanted to help, he was powerless. Want to go to a place where the evening breeze is even more comfortable? Want to go? Yun Qian thought for a moment, then nodded. Elliot Reed brought Yun Qian to the seaside together. Looking at the rolling waves, Yun Qian suddenly felt much more comfortable. What Grandpa Pei said today kept echoing in her ears. As longtime friends, how could Yun Qian not know Noah's feelings for her? It's just that Noah didn't say it and neither did she. The two of them had been getting along in this tacit understanding. But she always felt it was unfair to Noah because if it wasn't spoken, then Noah would never have the chance to let go. Yun Qian only regarded Noah as her best friend, and she never thought that one day the two of them would become strangers. Looking at Yun Qian, who looked a little worried, Elliot Reed took a candy from his pocket and placed it in her palm. Looking at the candy in her hand, Yun Qian looked at Elliot Reed with a hint of surprise in her eyes. Why? Why are you giving me candy? Elliot Reed was treating her like a child. Eating candy can make you feel a little better. Elliot Reed's words made Yun Qian slightly stunned. Once upon a time she had said the same thing to Elliot Reed. I remember when she and Elliot Reed had just gotten married, and Elliot Reed was still grieving Lillian's departure. Every day was filled with gloom, his indifferent face devoid of any expression. Although Yun Qian suffered daily harassment from Sulon, she still tried every day to find ways to make Elliot Reed happy. Her mother told her that eating candy could improve her mood, back when Yun Qian's father had just passed away, and she couldn't accept it for a long time either. She would cry whenever she thought of her father, and Yunmu would give her candy to ease her mood. Yun Qian unwrapped the candy in her hand and put it in her mouth. A rich sweetness spread in her mouth, and even the sea breeze was tinged with sweetness, entering her nasal cavity and then flowing into her heart. Is it good? Elliot Reed looked at Yun Qian with a slow expectation in his eyes, like a child waiting to be praised. Yun Qian slightly curved the corners of her lips, then nodded, delicious. A faint smile also appeared on Elliot Reed's face. Yun Qian took off her high heels and held them in her hand, then walked barefoot on the soft sand, letting the waves hit her calves. Watching Yun Qian's relaxed and comfortable appearance, Elliot Reed followed closely behind her, watching her back, the smile on his face growing deeper. He really hoped that the distance between the two of them could always be this close, and he wished that time could pass slower, even slower at this moment. As she walked, Yun Qian felt as if her stomach moved slightly. She stopped and carefully felt the faint movement on her stomach. It wasn't her imagination just now, her stomach did move, it was the baby in her belly moving. This was the first time Yun Qian felt fetal movement, and she found it incredibly magical. She placed her hand on her lower abdomen, feeling the slight throbbing. Seeing Yun Qian stop and hold her stomach, Elliot Reed immediately rushed to her side anxiously. What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Yun Qian looked up at Elliot Reed, her face full of joy. He moved. Elliot Reed was stunned for a moment before realizing that Yun Qian was talking about the baby kicking. This was also Elliot Reed's first time being a father, and he was experiencing many things for the first time.